Welcome to video 17 of Gamer to Game Developer Series 1, and in this video we'll implement weapon selection, so being able to choose which weapon we want to use. So the objectives for this video is first we'll go through the change weapon script, the most important script in this video, then we'll update the fire blaster script, the fire block eraser script, and then that'll be it for the scripts. Then we'll make two icons, the blaster projectile and the block eraser icon, so that way when we're changing our weapon we can see what the currently selected weapon is. So I'll just briefly describe that. So this change weapon script, what it does, it allows the player to quickly select their weapon. They just press like the 3 key or whatever key that you choose, and you'll cycle through your weapons. So currently we just have two weapons, the blaster and the block eraser, so it'll just cycle between two weapons. So what it does is that this change weapon script is making use of states. We're going to define some states, and for each state we have a weapon allocated to it, and it's in a list. So whenever we press, like for example, the 3 key, we'll just increment through the list and select. It'll automatically then select the weapon that belongs to that part in the list, so that state, which we'll just discuss in the script. It's quite simple actually, but quite powerful at the same time. So the end result is that the change weapon script causes this display here, which we see that shows the currently selected weapon, and the change weapon script is the one that allows us to choose our weapon. And these other scripts, what we're going to do when we update them is that they will simply look at what the currently selected weapon is. So what is the current weapon state? If the weapon state is like blaster, then the fire blaster script will know that it is the currently selected weapon, so it can be active. When the player presses left click, it'll fire. If that's the case for the fire block eraser, so if the fire block eraser script sees that the current weapon state is block eraser, then it will know that it is the currently selected weapon, and it can then proceed to fire when the player presses left click. So by using these states, we can essentially deactivate all the other weapon scripts. So let's go on to that script. So our very first step will be to discuss how this change weapon script works. Now before I go ahead and open the change weapon script, I'll define our input. So edit, project settings, input, and I'll change fire 2 now. I'll change that to change weapon. And as always, the spelling here and the way we write it is very important, because that's what our script is going to look for. So I'm going to call it change weapon, and I'm going to set the positive button to 3. So it's the right type. It's a type is key or mouse button, so that's good. So I'll change the positive button simply to the number 3. Okay. And we can have an alternative positive button, so I might just select E, just so that we can use it in the editor. So we can delete this E later on and just leave it 3. But just for now, we'll leave it, have it E. So if we're testing in the editor, we can still change our weapon. The numerical keys might not work in the editor. All right. So now that we've defined that key, that input, let's go ahead and open the change weapon script. All right. And I'll expand these comments, and let's go ahead and see what it's talking about. So the script, yes, it's attached to both player characters, and it allows them to change their currently selected weapon. The fire blaster script will access this script, of course, to determine if it is the currently selected weapon, and the fire block eraser script does exactly the same thing to try and see if it is the currently selected weapon. Now I'll go over to the variables, and you'll see that I'm making use of something different. We have here public enum state, and inside you'll notice it's written like blaster and block eraser. And something I shouldn't have there at the end is that comma, so I'll just get rid of that. So there's only 2 items in this enum. So what this is that these are like predefined constants. We'll never change them. So if we have only a select few weapons in the game and there will only ever be those weapons in the game, or some other sort of conditions that we want, for example, maybe it's the seasons of the year like spring, summer, autumn, winter, that sort of thing that never change, then you can use an enum, and you're going to see how we're going to use it. It's very simple and it saves us a lot of code in trying to determine what the current, you could say, active constant in that enum list is. It's not a list yet, it's just a set of variables. They really actually, it's a symbolic sort of meaning. So these words here, they're not actually they're not strings, they might be numbers, but what they are is an easy way for us to understand, for us as the programmer to be able to make use of them. So once I start using them, I'll be able to better explain what I'm going on about. So the first variable after that, so as I said, these are the constants, blaster, block eraser, they never change. We have those 2 weapons and they're defined right in the beginning of the script. Then we're going to make a variable. Its type is this enum state. So you can see here, public state selected weapon is equal to state.blaster. So I've actually created a new variable that is actually is of the type of this state right here, which is very interesting. So because of that, I'm able to say that the selected weapon, this variable I've made up, is equal to state.blaster. Now it's totally symbolic what this is, and you'll see how we're going to use it. We're going to use a list next. So these other variables here, they're just for defining that window that we saw in the PowerPoint slide. And of course the textures here that the icons are attached to, the GUI style, some padding again for just defining that window. So these are nothing exciting. So then we have here, you'll see how we use this int here called selected weapon number. At the moment it's 0. We're going to use this to cycle through the list, and this is the list that we're talking about. So this list is used to store all the weapon states and will be used for quick selection of a weapon. So this is the really important bit. Now you'll notice here that this list, notice that, we always put public list and then the type of the list. So for example, string, integer, or whatever class that we made up. Now you'll see here, this one is quite interesting. It says change weapon dot state. So this very script name, change weapon, this class, change weapon dot state. So that's the type of this list. And I've given the list a name that I've made up, weapon list is equal to a new list, and that's how you, of course, create a new list. So you'll notice that's state of the list. So by doing this, we can now add these state items into the list. So we can actually now increment through a list that doesn't contain numbers, it doesn't contain strings, but it's containing, well, not to the user anyway, but it's containing symbolic names that we immediately understand. We know what they are. So you'll see how we're going to use that. So I'll just briefly go through the start function. And what you can see here is just simply I'm defining that GUI style, which is weapon style, just setting the color of the font white, making it bold, giving it word wrap, and setting the alignment to be in the middle left of that box. So no big deal. Then this is where now we're adding those states to this weapon list. So let's have a look here. Add each of the weapons to the weapon list. This will be used for quick selection of weapons. So what I'm seeing here is weapon list dot add state dot blaster, and I've also done weapon list dot add state dot block eraser. So I haven't added any strings or numbers or any funny sort of things to try and describe what my different weapons are. I've actually used these names that never change. So going into the update function, so now we come to the interesting bit. So the player can quickly change weapons using the change weapon button. So it's really short, very simple. So all we're saying is if the player presses their change weapon button, which we had just defined as 3 or E, then this variable selected weapon number, this int that we had up here, selected weapon number, which is initially 0, just incremented by 1 plus plus. Now we're going to go through the list, and whatever is the selected weapon, so whatever is the current, so based on selected weapon number, so if selected weapon number is 0, then we're going to say weapon list entry, the entry that is equal to the number selected weapon number, so 0, that item in the list is the currently selected weapon. So because we added to the list blaster and then block eraser, so in the list element 0 is the blaster, element 1 is the block eraser. So we initially start with the blaster. That's always going to be our starting weapon. It's element 0 because selected weapon number is going to be 0. So what we're going to see here is that if selected, what we're doing here, this is just a simple control. If the selected weapon number is equal to the weapon list.count, then just set weapon list selected weapon number back to 0. And the reason for that is so that we don't keep incrementing forever and going beyond the bounds of the list. So I'll come back to that bit. This is the key bit here. Of all the code in the script, this is the key bit, where selected weapon is equal to weapon list selected weapon number. So whatever is the selected weapon number, whatever item in the list is of that element, then that is the selected weapon. And as you remember, selected weapon is a variable that's of the type of the state. So we have here public state selected weapon is equal to state.blaster. Now by having this, other scripts can now come and see what is selected weapon. They can come and see that it is state. So the blaster script will be checking, oh, is selected weapon state.blaster? If it is, then the rest of the script will go ahead. So I'll go through that again to explain that properly. So what we have here is that when the player presses their change weapon button, then the selected weapon number, which is just a value that increments, will go, say, from 0 to 1. Now because it's 1 here, so weapon list element 1 is assigned to that variable selected weapon. So selected weapon is going to equal state.block eraser. Then what's going to happen is that the fire block eraser script is going to see that weapon, that selected weapon is equal to state.block eraser. Now because it sees that, it'll know that itself, that script, the rest of the code can continue. And when we modify those scripts, very simple, we'll just add a line of code. It'll be very simple. You'll see that that script is looking at selected weapon, this specific variable here. And you can see that we're using the one variable for all the types of weapons. So we'll have 2 more weapons, of course, and this single variable is being used for all of them. It's such a simple way to check what the current weapon state is. So let's go through that again in full. Okay. So let's say the weapon now is state.block eraser. So that means selected weapon number is equal to 1. And the list has 2 elements in it. It has 0, which is blaster. It has 1, which is block eraser. And the count of the list is 2 because there's 2 items in the list. So always remember that the count and the list elements are different. So list element starts from 0. So its index, it starts from 0 and it continues from there. Whereas when you say list.count, the first element, which is 0, is always it'll always count as meaning that there's 1 item in that list already. So the count would be 2 in this case, and so we would have elements 0 and 1. So now going back here, so selected weapon number, add 1 to that. So it'll increment. So our selected weapon will then become 2. Now there aren't any items in the list beyond element 1. So if we tried to say that selected weapon is equal to weapon list number 2, index 2, it'll bring back an error because there's nothing beyond in the list after element 1. There's no element 2, so it'll bring up an error. So what we do, we just simply say if selected weapon number is equal to the weapon list.count. So if selected weapon number in this case is equal to 2, then set selected weapon number back to 0. Very simple. So that way we're just able to cycle through the list without any errors. Very, very simple. And then selected weapon now, this variable is now equal to weapon list selected weapon number, which is 0. And that'll mean that selected weapon is state.blaster. So going back up, you can see that the variable selected weapon is of the type a state, and that state has 2 symbolic names in it, blaster, block eraser, and when we start off we set selected weapon to be the state.blaster, and other scripts are going to come and look at the script and see what selected weapon is. What is the state? What is the weapon state? And it'll see that it is state.blaster. And quite simply, then that script, the blaster script, will know that it is the currently selected weapon. Now the alternate methods of doing this, one is you could put every single weapon that gets generated, say in your game you have many different types of weapons and you can make weapons in the game or items or whatever. So then you would use some sort of like say public list or something like that anyway. And then you just keep adding items to that list, and you can use this same sort of check as well if you wanted to cycle through those items. Say maybe you could make up to 10 random weapons or whatever, then you could just cycle through them in the same sort of way, and instead you'd just go through the list, and those other scripts, all you can make them do is to just check that that entry in the list, the current position in the list, is equal to say like list whatever the current index is equal to blaster or something like that, and that would mean that that is the currently selected weapon and the script can be active. So that is another way you can do it. You can use a public list, you can use booleans if you wanted to. There's more coding involved there obviously, and I'm sure there are many other ways of doing it, but I've chosen to use an enum. It's a very powerful way of defining symbolic terms that are never going to change. So in my project here, we're only going to have 4 weapons, and the player can't create any weapons on the fly. So there's no need to have any sort of complicated or I guess awkward looking code. I can just quite simply use some predefined names and then just make them states and then see what the current state is. Okay, so I spent a lot of time talking about that. So I should spend a little bit of time now going through the rest of the script. So we have here our window function. So selected weapon window, it's int window ID. So we just give it a window number here, it's number 9, so that way it doesn't conflict with any other window that's currently there. If you can't remember what the number is, then just give it some number that seems higher than what the previous ones that you gave were. And if selected weapon here, so now let's have a look here what we're doing. So if selected weapon is equal to change weapon .state.blaster. So that's how you check the state. You say the name of the class, so it's change weapon, that's the name of the script, .state.blaster. If it's that, then that is what the GUI layout.label is going to show. It's going to show the blaster icon. Now if it's selected weapon, so if the state is block eraser, then it's just going to show the block eraser icon. So very simple. That's the function for the window. So in the onGUI function, then we'll run this function to display to make that window appear. So what I do here is that I define the position of that window, and it's just screen.width divided by 2 minus padding. This is simply to give it the left position that I'm after on the screen, and weapon top is equal to screen.height divided by 2 minus screen.height over 4. So that's to put it below the middle half of the screen. And the best way to see how that works is to just change these numbers. If you change them, then you'll see what the new position is, and that's an easy way to understand what's happening here. And once again, the reason why I have it calculating repeatedly is just in case if you had made it a web player and you went full screen and then you went away from full screen, then it would automatically update itself. The player wouldn't see any glitchiness or anything, and the various windows will appear at their correct positions on the screen relative to each other. So then we have here weapon rect. So as usual, we define a rect for a window, and it's simply we give it its left position, which is screen.width minus weapon left, screen.height minus weapon top, and then weapon width, which is the width of the window, weapon height, which is the height of the window. And then we draw the window. So weapon rect is equal to GUI.window. Its ID is 9, so it shouldn't conflict with any other window. And then we actually carry out that, we draw that rect, which is weapon rect. And then we have selected weapon window, which is the function. And at the top of the window, we write selected weapon. Okay, so that is it for this script. So it was a bit of a convoluted explanation that I gave, but it's basically all we're doing is we have some predefined constants, some predefined names of weapons, and I just wanted to be able to cycle through those names and be able to have our currently selected weapon based on that and have other scripts look at it. Okay, so that's it. I'll stop here for this step and we'll move on to the next step where we'll start editing scripts. We're on to step 2 of 5, which is to update the Fire Blaster script. Let's open up the Fire Blaster script and start making changes. So let's go over to Quick References. And we're going to access the change weapon script. So I might as well add here the comment that this script accesses the change weapon script. And the reason for that, of course, is to see what the currently selected weapon is. So back down in the quick reference, type in private, change weapon, weapon script. Okay, then we just simply go over to the start function, and there we'll access this script. Well, not access it, but set up the reference to it. So weapon script is equal to my transform, and we're going to attach the change weapon script to both of the players. So my transform dot get component, and that component, of course, is change weapon. Alright, so that's it for the start function. Now we simply just need to go over to the update function and just add in the check. So we have here if input fire, yes, time.time greater than true, and yes, the energy cost needs to be, there needs to be enough energy to use the blaster weapon. Now we also have and another condition, which is weapon script dot selected weapon is change weapon dot state dot blaster. Okay, and that's it for this script. That's all we needed to edit. So all that's happening now is that we're checking that the currently selected weapon is the blaster. So in the change weapon script, the state is blaster. That enum state, the selected item in there, is blaster. And all we did in the start function was access the script, and in the variables we just set up that variable that we used as a quick reference. Okay, so I'll just save that, quickly check in Unity that there are no problems, and no they aren't, which is good, and we'll move on to the next step. We're on to step 3, which is to update the fire block eraser script. Okay, we'll now open up the fire block eraser script and edit that one. So I'll add in the comment here that this script accesses, just like what we just wrote previously, this script accesses the change weapon script. Alright, now let's go ahead and in the variables add our new variable. It's exactly the same as for the fire blaster script, but this time, since I don't have a bit for quick references anywhere, well actually no, I sort of do right here actually. So let me just do it more cleanly. I'll separate that out and I'll write here the comment quick references, and below I will type private change weapon script. That's going to be our variable. And just like before, we'll access it now. So heading over here into the start function, we just simply set up the reference. So weapon script is equal to myTransform.getComponent and the component, of course, is change weapon. Okay, so that's it for that. Now we just need to scroll down to the update function, and where if screen.lockCursor is true, then we'll have the statement and weapon script dot selected weapon is change weapon dot state dot block eraser. Okay. So very simply, if the weapon state in the change weapon script, if the state is block eraser, then this script will continue to execute the rest of the code in the update function. If not, then it won't. And that's it. That's all we're doing. So let's save it. That's just a simple way to control what will get fired when we press left click. And that's it for updating our scripts. So we'll go ahead in our next steps and actually make the icons that'll be displayed by the change weapon script in the GUI window that we've set up. And we'll then set up, after we've made all the icons, we'll attach the script to the players and plug in the icons, and away we go. We're on to step 4, which is to make the blaster projectile icon. Okay, what we're going to do is to make a new scene. So file, new scene, and we'll save it. So save scene as, and inside the folder scenes, I'll name this one Studio. Okay, and we're going to use this to take screenshots. So the next thing I'll do is to drop in the blaster projectile. So just drop it in. I'll reset just its position. Okay, so we can see it there now. And I'll turn off the light. I will also turn off its script so it doesn't fly away. Now I'll go over to the camera and I'll change its position. So X 0, yes. Y 0. And Z I'll set to minus 0.5. So now we've come a lot closer to the projectile. And I'll change the rotation to minus 45. Okay, so that should be it. We're actually ready to go ahead and build and run, but what we're going to do is go to File, Build Settings. Okay, and we need to add the current scene to the build list, and we'll deactivate our usual scene, Series 1 prototype, and just leave this one active, so that when we build and run the game, this will be the scene that will load up first. So we haven't made any way, of course, to go from scene to scene, so we haven't made it load up the other scene. So that's why we're doing that. We're making this scene the default one for now. Okay, so we've done that. Let's go ahead and build and run. So I will save that. Yes, I want to overwrite what I've done. Yes, replace it. Okay, and now I'll set it to fantastic. Hit play so it'll look as sharp as possible. And I'll just close this down. Okay, coming back. Okay, so all I'm going to do is to take a screenshot of this. So just hit your print screen button on your keyboard, take a screenshot, and now we're going to go over to GIMP. So we don't need it anymore. That's all we wanted to do. So I've got it open. Oh, I might as well just minimize everything. And then open it up, sort everything out. Let's move this over. All right. And I'll just create a new. Now in my case, since I have a widescreen monitor, I'll take 1600 by 1200, but it's up to you. Whatever is more suitable, a resolution, you can even define it manually. So I'll just hit OK. And I'm just going to paste in our screenshot. So I'm just going to do Control V and just paste it in. Now the very first thing I'm going to do is to select this green color. And the reason for that, you'll see, is that I'm going to set the background color to be the same as the object that I'm interested in. I want to make an icon of this blaster, and I need everything else to be transparent. Now if I just try to do it by just cutting out the object, with this blaster we might get away with it, but with the blocks we won't be able to. What'll happen is you'll see like the background color, right now it's white, you'll see that outlining the transparent object. Like the background will be all transparent, and there'll be this odd jagged like white line or black line or whatever is the background color will be visible on the object that we're interested in, and that doesn't look very good for an icon. So what we're going to do is to select this blaster projectile's color and then set the background color to the same color, and then we're going to clear that background color. So what we'll do is to then just select the back color, use the color picker tool, and select this green color. Okay. Now I will undo our screenshot, so Control Z, I'll just remove it. And I'll swap the green color to be the 4 color. I'll use the bucket and fill it in. Now I'll swap it back to the background color, and I'll go to Layer, Transparency, Add Alpha Channel, and then I will do Edit Clear. Okay, now I will do Control V again to paste in our screenshot, and I'm going to use the crop tool right here, and let's just draw a bit around it, just roughly, and set the size to 512 by 512. Okay, and I'll maneuver that to be not in the center. Don't place the blaster projectile in the center of the cropped area, because when this icon is displayed by that window, the window has a bit of its own transparent border around it, and that'll cause your icon to appear too low to the right. So give it some bias towards the upper left. So maybe that's too much. Maybe about there is fine. So it's not the center, but it's not too far from the center either. Yeah, about there, I believe. Okay, and now I'll just hit enter, and that's it. I've cropped it. Okay, now we're going to use the paths tool, so this one right here, to actually select the edges of this blaster projectile, and the rest of the image will be transparent. Nope, that's a bit off. So I just held Control down and I zoomed in with the mouse wheel. And you can zoom out in the same way. So use the Paths tool to select the outline of this icon to be. And that didn't come out quite right, so I'll undo that and do a better job of that. Okay, and once we reach the end, close it by selecting the first node. And we can now press enter. And there you go. It's gotten rid of everything else except what we had selected. And of course you can notice how the transparency is working. You can see that it's all just pixels, and you have these pixels that have a different level of transparency. And of course it looks jagged close in, but farther out it'll look quite smooth. So to just get rid of that, let's just press, oops, wrong one. Let's just press Control H and then Control A to get rid of the marching ants, and then I'll just click any other button. So I've just clicked the Move tool. Alright, and that's it. So we have the first bit done, which is having our blaster projectile on a transparent background. Now we'll just add in a really basic effect. So what I'll do is I'll go to Filters, Light and Shadow, and I'll put a gradient flare. Now I'm just going to base it off our default gradient flare. So just copy it, and I'll call the copy Blaster. Now I'll edit it, and what I'll do is to go over to the Glow tab, and I'll choose a different type of radial glow. So instead of radial glow 1, I'll use flare, raise. Let's have a look. Flare, raise. There we go. Flare, raise, radial 2. Okay. And I'll set the hue rotation to -180. So all the way to the left, so it's more green. And I'll set the size to 200. Okay. I'll then go to the raise, reduce the size to 0. I'll go to second flares and reduce the size to 0. So I click OK, that's what we're after. And now I'll position it to be about in the center of the blaster projectile. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so that's good enough. And that's it. So I just hit OK. And that's our really basic icon. So let's save it. So save as, in the usual place, assets, textures, and let's see, what shall I call this one? I'll call it blaster icon .png. And yep, all of this stuff, save. Now let's go over to Unity. And let's see our new texture. There we go. The blaster icon has been made. Okay, what we'll do now as well, and you'll notice here, you'll see that the background color is the one that we had set. Remember, we used the color picker tool, selected the blaster projectile color and set that as the background. So this is what's transparent. That's the background that's transparent. And when we open it up, we can see that it's a pretty good transparent icon. It's pretty sharp looking and it'll serve its purpose well for us. So another thing I'll do is to go over to the texture importer, and the texture type, I'll go to advanced, and I will just turn off generate MIP maps. And what this does is that when the texture is scaled down to, say, a smaller size, which is what we're going to do, the quality of the texture would be automatically reduced. So if I increase that, let me have a look. So there you go, you can see, like, you can change, you can watch the previews of what happens to the texture. In our case, it really probably won't make much difference, but I'll just turn it off anyway. And so now we don't have that effect. Okay, so that's it for our blaster icon. So we've completed this step. So we'll go to the next step where we'll set up the block eraser icon. So it'll be a similar set of steps. And then we'll build and run the game. We'll attach everything together. We're on to our last step, which is to make the block eraser icon. And after that, we'll build and run the game. Okay, and just for our texture, I'll just hit apply so the changes are applied. And now I'll go ahead to our blaster and just deactivate it. So now we're going to drag in our construction block. So let's just drop it in, and we'll need to reposition our main camera, of course. But first, let's reset its position. So reset position. I'll go to the main camera and I'll change its positioning. So I'll set X to -1, Y I'll set to 1.5, and I'll set Z to -1, and what about the rotation? I'll set Z to 0, I'll set X to 45, I'll set Y to 45. Now that's it position, but it looks really odd because there's no light in the scene. So let's go over to Edit, Render Settings, and I'll set the ambient light to a full white. Okay, and that's what I'm after. That's good. And we should probably be ready to build and run. So I'll do that. File, build and run. I'll hit print screen again, take a screenshot. I'll head over to GIMP. I'll create a new texture, so I'll close this one. And file, I'll minimize everything. This will be tidier. Go back to GIMP. File, new. Yes, same resolution. And, well, no, we didn't want that background color, but that's no problem. So then paste in our image, our screenshot. We will now select the background color like last time. Use the color picker tool to select the border, the edge of the cube. That's the color that we're interested in. So this is our new background color. All right, so undo pasting in of the screenshot. So Control Z, swap the color, use the bucket tool, fill in the texture with this new color, swap it back to the background color. Go to Layer, Transparency, add Alpha Channel, then do Edit, Clear. Okay, and now we will paste it back in, Control V. I will use the crop tool. I'll select the cube. I'll reset the size to 512 by 512. I will reposition. this cropping area, give some bias to the top left, as I mentioned before, because the window that gets generated by the change weapon script automatically has some padding on the top and left sides. So I believe that should be alright. It's really a guess. And I'll just hit enter. Okay. Now we're going to have to use the paths tool to select the outline of the cube. So I'll zoom in and I will select the paths tool. I'll have to zoom in pretty close for these edges. Okay. Just hit the corners. Try to keep some of that blue in, but don't try to get too much of the jagged parts in. And this is actually easier than the blaster. It's just a bunch of straight lines. Okay. We're getting there. No, that's not quite right. There we go, that's better. Alright, and then connect to the first node. And then I'll zoom out and hit enter. I'll hit Control H. I will then hit Control A. That's done. And I will then just select any other tool to get rid of that border. And there we go. That's our cube, and it's pretty good as it is. Now, I'm going to make that blurry sort of appearance for the the block eraser weapon. I don't know, somehow that just seems to me, I just seem to imagine that's erasing. So maybe because of smudging erasers or something, but I'll save this in the meantime. So we have our block icon already. We have our construction block icon, which we can use in the next video when we have build options. So we'll only have one build option by the next video, but in video 19, we're going to have the air block as well, and we will be doing the same thing for that block. So I'll save this, so save as, and it's in the correct folder, and I'll save this as construction block icon.png, and save. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll copy this layer. So I'll duplicate the layer. Now with the duplicate, what I will do is I will go to Filters, Artistic, and I will select Cubism. And you'll see what the effect is. I find that quite interesting. And I'll just leave it as it is, the default settings. Okay. And I will set this layer from mode normal to mode overlay. So you can see that it's become very faint. It is there, but it's been overlaid into the other image. So that way it's not so pronounced, all that blockiness. Now I'll go back to the original layer. And I will go to Filters, Blur, Motion Blur. I'll use a linear blur type as it currently is, and I'll set the length, say to, let me try 60, and let me try an angle of 30. Okay, so there's a sort of blurring action happen there, so let me just hit OK. See what the effect is. Is that what I want? Yeah, it looks pretty close. I think that's what I want. It looks pretty nice. I like it. It's an interesting effect. Let me have a good look at it. Let me zoom in. Let me think about it. And yeah, I think that's it. So I will just save that actually. So File, Save As. I am wondering though if maybe I set the icon too far to the upper right. Almost feels like I have. Oh well, but I guess that's not too big a deal. So I'll just save it. So Save As. And I will call this one Block Eraser Icon. Block Eraser Icon.png. Okay, and I'll export. and save it. Okay, so let's just jump back to Unity and let's have a look at our new textures. So we have here the construction block icon. Okay, so that one's good. It has the background color, etc. Now let's just change the texture type from advanced, turn off to advanced, turn off generate bitmaps, hit apply. Let's have a look at the block eraser icon. Yeah, because we've added the effect, I guess it's resorted back to a default background color of black, but it's no problem because of the blurriness of the image itself. You won't see the jaggedness, so it's no big deal. So advanced, turn off generate bitmaps, hit apply. Let's open it up, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, I think it looks pretty nice actually. But I guess that's not very objective, that's very subjective since I'm the one who made it. And this one looks sharp, and that's what we're after. Okay, so we have our icons made. So let's go ahead and go back to our main scene. So I'll just save this one. So go back to Series 1 prototype. I will now select each of the players and add that script. So the script is change weapon. So I can just drag it in, of course. And it requires two textures, the blaster icon and the block eraser icon. So I'll drag in the blaster icon to its texture slot, and I'll drop in the block eraser icon into its. And I will then go over to the red player, drop in that same script, I'll attach the blaster icon, and I'll attach the block eraser icon. Okay, and that's it. And the other two scripts were updated and they're already attached. So that should be it. I should be able to go to File, to Build Settings. Let's deactivate the studio, reactivate Series 1 prototype, hit Build and Run, and yes, save over the scene. Oh, and it's had a bit of an error doing it, so I guess the best thing for me to do will be to just close down Unity and reopen Unity. So I'll just save that and close it down. I guess it's a... Oh no, the reason why it can't do that is because I still have this running. So yes, to build and run, you do need to close down any open games. So I'll clear that. So File, Build Settings, let me check that's all okay. Yes, it is. I'll try build and running again. Yes, I'll replace. And it looks like it's working properly. So that was a user error on my part. I can set that back to good now. I don't need the graphics quality at the highest. I'll hit play. I'll go here. I'll close this down. I will... Who should I set up a server on? I should set it up here so I can see any errors. I will connect. I'll connect as a red player. And let me just drag this down so... Well, it's not going to show very well. But okay. So if I hit 3, okay, it does change in the editor, so I guess I was wrong. You can use the... Oh, I shouldn't have actually set E. That's actually quite silly when I think about it, because E is blink. So I can actually use the 3 key to change my weapon. And, well, yes, to change my weapon. So currently it's the block eraser. And when I left click, nothing's happening because I have no blocks around. I can right click. And now I can remove blocks. So I can just left click. Yep, that's all working fine. And now if I press the 3 key, it changes to the blaster. And so it's behaving as expected. So we have our change weapon capability implemented now. So in the next video, we're going to implement being able to select our build options. So at the moment you can still see the guide block is visible. So in the next video we'll only have two options, construction block or nothing. And with nothing, the guide block will simply disappear. So let me just press 3 again. I'll just try making more blocks. Yep, it's working. I can see that there's block eraser. There's no conflict with the blaster, which is really good. I can change to this and all seems well. Let me go to the other player. So I believe I connected with the red player. So let me try with the blue player. And yep, that weapon is selected. If I change, yes, then we have block eraser, and pressing left click does nothing until we get to the block. Okay, so that's it. That's very good. So it's very simple, the system that we set up, but it's effective, as you can see. We only have one weapon operating at any one time, and as we add more into the game, we can just update that change weapon list, that enum actually in there, and we'll have more states, and each of the scripts, well, the script that for the new weapon will simply just check whether it's the state if the currently selected weapon is it. So later on we'll have like the particle cannon and the rocket, and they both will have the same type of check in them, and so they can be the only weapon selected. Okay, so that was it for this video. It was really simple. So thank you for watching, and in our next video we'll implement build options. So we'll do pretty much exactly the same thing again, except this time it'll be for the build options. And after that, in video 19, then we will build the air block, which is actually a replica of the construction block, except that it can be built anywhere in the sky. That'll be a fairly longish video, but nevertheless we'll get that all built and implemented into the game. And then after that, then we'll have a bunch of very interesting videos. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.